What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video we're going to be looking at the key differences between the iPhone 10 and the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. Why are we comparing these two devices? Well, they are the best that their manufacturers have to offer. We've got the best from Apple and the best from Samsung. So starting off with the size, the S9 Plus is larger compared to the iPhone 10, around 14.5mm in terms of the height, 2.9mm in terms of the width, and it's also 0.8mm thicker. It weighs around about 15 grams more, and this is all because it does have a larger display. We've got a 6.2-inch display on the S9 Plus. On the iPhone 10, we've got a 5.8-inch display. Now we've got OLED technology on both of these displays. On the S9 Plus, it is Super AMOLED, and on the iPhone 10, they are calling it a Super Retina display. Now, technical aspects aside, both of these are absolutely beautiful, and they've got deep blacks and very vibrant colors, some of the best displays out there. Now, I know some people are going to joke that Samsung has made the display for the iPhone 10 anyway, and yes, that is the case, but it's a great display, and I'm glad that Apple did go with OLED technology rather than LCD as they've done for their previous devices. Now, another great thing about both devices is that they have minimal bezels. With the S9 Plus, we've actually got smaller bezels compared to the S8 Pluses last year, and with the iPhone 10 we do have small bezels. We have that notch. I know some people don't like it. Personally, I don't mind it too much. We've got very high resolutions on both displays as well. However, the S9 Plus does have a higher pixel density. Now, it's not a huge deal, but it is going to be slightly sharper. Now, moving on to the build and design. With the iPhone 10, you've got metal frame with glass panels on the front and back. Looks and feels very premium. With the S9 Plus, it looks very similar to last year's S8 Plus, and that is again with the metal frame and curved glass panels on the front and back. Now, obviously, design is subjective and it's going to come down to your personal preference. I do think that the curved glass looks very nice. For some people though, they feel that you can't get a screen protector on there easily and they prefer a flat display. The iPhone 10 is only available in two colors. There's black and there's silver. With the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, it is going to be available in 4 colors and it's going to depend on your market. Both devices are also water and dust resistant, which is great. We've got IP68 rating on the S9 Plus. On the iPhone 10, we've got IP67, so slight edge does go to the S9 Plus. Now, moving on to the internals, the iPhone 10 has the A11 Bionic chip, which is super fast. The S9 Plus, on the other hand, comes with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 or the Exynos 9810, both of which are very fast chips. In terms of RAM, we've got double the amount of RAM on the S9 Plus, 6GB of RAM compared to 3 on the iPhone 10. Now, this should help in terms of multitasking, and my previous speed test that I did do with the iPhone 10 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, although the iPhone 10 was faster in loading up lots of the apps and games, it didn't manage to keep as many apps open as the Note 8 with 6GB of RAM. So this might be also the case with the S9 Plus. We will do some speed tests side by side to see which one of these is faster. Make sure you're subscribed to see that first. Now, the speed and performance is also going to come down to the operating systems and how well optimized they are. And we have iOS 11 on the iPhone 10. On the S9 Plus, we have Android Oreo with the Samsung Experience Skin on top. I've said this before, but in terms of which operating system is better, it does come down to your personal preference. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Looking at storage, the iPhone 10 comes in 2 options, either 64GB or 256GB. You cannot expand this, however. With the S9 Plus, it definitely gets the advantage in this category with 128GB as a base, and that can be expanded via the micro SD card slot, and you can get a micro SD card of up to 400GB. Now let's take a look at the cameras. With the iPhone 10, we've got a dual camera setup. There is one wide angle with an f1.7 aperture, and then there is a telephoto camera with an f2.4 aperture, which is going to give you 2x optical zoom. Both are optically stabilized. Now, I've done lots of tests with the iPhone 10, lots of camera comparisons. It's definitely one of the best cameras out there right now. It's got great dynamic range and it's very reliable. I also like the portrait mode that comes out of the iPhone 10, and that's going to blur the background to give you some really nice looking shots. You've also got portrait lighting, which is going to let you toggle through some different effects after the fact. In my experience, this hasn't worked too well, especially when it comes to studio lighting. Now, with the S9 Plus camera, we've got some major changes. Samsung is saying this is the camera reimagined, and we've got dual 12 megapixel cameras, both optically stabilized, and there is a similar setup where we've got a wide angle as well as a telephoto. The telephoto also has an f2.4 aperture, But the interesting thing is the wide angle camera actually has a dual aperture lens. You've got f1.5, which is the widest aperture on any smartphone right now. It's going to let in a bunch of light, and this lets in 28% more light compared to the S8 last year. And then we've got f2.4. Now this is actually a mechanical change between the two, and you can physically see it on the camera if you look closely. And the way this works is that if the camera notices that you have over 100 lux of light, then it's going to use f2.4 to give you more focus in your shot and give you a generally better image in good light. And then when you're below 100 lux, then it's going to use the f1.5 aperture to give you a much brighter image. Now obviously we're going to be doing some super SAF style camera comparisons between these two as soon as the S9 Plus retail version is out, and I cannot wait to test these out, especially when it comes to low light. The S9 Plus also comes with a portrait mode of its own, and it's called Live Focus, and this is going to give you a blurry background on your shots. The good thing with the S9 Plus is that you can actually edit the amount of blur that you want after the fact. And it also takes two shots, one from the telephoto camera as well as the wide camera. So you do have that wide angle shot as well if needed. Now when it comes to video, the iPhone 10 has 4K at 60 frames a second, one of the first smartphone cameras to have this frame rate. And it's great, definitely one of the best video cameras on a smartphone out right now. With the S9 Plus, you also now have 4K at 60 frames a second. Now the new thing that we've got here on the S9 Plus is super slow-mo, so that's 720p at 960 frames a second. Now this is just a short burst like we had with Sony last year, but the problem with the Sony cameras last year was that you have to tap it at the exact point, and more often than not, I found myself missing that moment. With the S9 Plus, you do have automatic motion detection, and you can set a square where you want it to detect the motion. When it does detect motion, it's going to start recording, and it's much easier to actually get that slow motion shot. I've only had a brief play around with this, but it does seem to work really well. Now for the front facing camera, the iPhone 10 has a 7 megapixel front facing camera with an f2.2 aperture. It also has a portrait mode as well as portrait lighting from the front facing camera. In my experience, it hasn't worked so great, maybe because I have a beard. It does seem to kind of struggle with the sides, and this is improving with time, but at this point in time it's not too great. With the S9 Plus, you've got an 8 megapixel front facing camera with autofocus and an f1.7 aperture. It also has a selfie portrait mode, and Samsung are calling this selfie focus. Once again, this is going to blur the background from your front facing shots. This works best in my experience so far on the Pixel 2, so it'll be interesting to see how well the S9 Plus performs. Now moving on to the audio, as you guys know, with the iPhone 10 we no longer have a headphone jack. This was the case as well with the iPhone 7s. But the good thing is that we do have stereo speakers on the iPhone 10, one on the earpiece and one bottom firing. Now with the S9 Plus, first things first, we do have a 3.5mm headphone jack, and I know this is a big deal for a lot of people. It's definitely quite important to me. And this year we also have stereo speakers tuned by AKG. Last year we had a single bottom firing speaker, so it's great that we do have stereo speakers this year around. The speakers do support Dolby Atmos surround sound, so you're going to be getting some nice immersive sound. Which one of these sounds better? We are going to have to spend some more time and make an assessment. I'm no audiophile, so I'm probably not going to be the best person to comment on this, but I'm sure lots of my friends in the tech community will do. Now looking at the additional features that both devices offer, the iPhone 10 does have Face ID. This is a very advanced form of facial recognition, and it does work very well overall in my experience. With the S9 Plus, you actually have multiple unlock options. You've got a fingerprint scanner, which is now in a much more accessible position compared to what we had last year. It's now below the cameras in the middle, and it works really well. You've also got an iris scanner, which we had last year, as well as facial recognition, although the facial recognition is not as advanced as Face ID on the iPhone 10. But you do have something called intelligent scan. Now this is where it's going to use the iris scanner as well as facial recognition in combination to give you more security. So it is nice to have multiple options to unlock on the S9 Plus. With the iPhone 10, I've said this before, but in addition to Face ID, it would have been nice to have a fingerprint scan on the Apple logo at the back. I just think there's certain situations where Face ID isn't ideal when your face is half sunken in the pillow and things like that. And in situations like that, Touch ID on the back in addition would have been nice. For the AI assistants, we've got Siri on the iPhone 10 and we've got Bixby on the S9 Plus. Now Bixby does have some new features with the S9 Plus, and some of them are in Bixby Vision. There's Live Translate, which is going to let you point your camera at, say, a menu or something, and it's going to translate that for you live there and then on your screen. And there's also some more features such as pointing your camera at food, and then it's going to give you information such as how many calories there are. Now the iPhone 10 introduced animojis. These are basically animated emojis, and the way it works is it uses the front facing camera as well as some sensors to see your facial expressions, and it repeats those on the emojis that you have on your phone, or animojis that you have in your phone. And you've got a variety of things like dogs, chickens, as well as poo. Now this was fun to start with, but for me the novelty wore off quite quickly. Now Samsung has an answer to animojis, and they are calling it AR emoji. And the way this works is you actually have a 3D character which is supposed to look like you. It uses your image to build this character, and then you can edit that character too. And then it's going to look at 100 features on your face to give realistic expressions to this AR emoji. I did a quick test of this. It didn't actually look much like me, but I guess I have to spend some more time with it. Now personally speaking, I think as with Animoji, this is something that I'd probably use for a bit and then just forget about later on. I don't know, this might be something that you enjoy. Now moving on to the batteries, the iPhone 10 has a 2716 mAh battery. This is non-removable, and it's actually been pretty good in my usage. With the S9 Plus, you have a larger 3500 mAh battery, and we'll see how well this performs in day-to-day usage. Now both devices support wireless charging, although you do have fast wireless charging on the S9 Plus. And both devices also have fast wireless charging. The advantage that you have on the S9 Plus is that you get the fast charger out of the box. You don't have to buy it separately. With the iPhone 10, you only get a standard charger out of the box. And if you do want fast charging, then here in the UK, it costs around about £75. And yes, that's in addition to the £1,000 that you're going to be spending on the iPhone. And that is the starting price for the 64GB version. And I've said this in my full review of the iPhone 10, that to me, this is still overpriced. Even though I really like the iPhone 10, I do think the price should be lower. The S9 Plus does come in at a lower price, and